You're listening to the Blind Tiger Record Club podcast, where we champion music of all genres, and we believe vinyl is king.
For a dying man, I feel pretty good, I feel pretty good. For a righteous man, I'll do what I should, do what I should. For a fallen man, I'll get up again, I'll get up again. For a dying man, I feel pretty good. Oh, we're born to trouble as the sparks fly high. Born to trouble as the sparks fly. It's alright. In the light, I see you glowing. It's alright. In the light, I see you glowing.
Blind Tiger Record Club is a box subscription service that delivers new vinyl directly to your door each month. You can choose from 6 genre styles, including Singer Songwriter, rock, alternative rock, classic rock, jazz, soul, and blues, and discover. Now B.T.R.C offers free shipping for all subscriptions in the U.S. You can even add vinyl picked from the store added to your next box, all with free shipping. So go to blindtigerrecordclub.com and start discovering and rediscovering new and classic music today.
It's alright. In the light, I see you glowing.
This episode is brought to you by 85 Supply. 85 Supply is a nationwide supplier of wholesale merchandise. These guys offer over 250,000 different products. They've worked with customers like CMT, Uber, Chick-fil-A, LaCroix, all the way to some of the most popular names in modern entertainment. Whether it's 50 pieces or 100,000 pieces, these guys have you covered. 85 Supply is a hands-on boutique merchandise experience. Check them out at 85supply.com, printing at its finest.
For a dying man, I feel pretty good, I feel pretty good.
All right, well, welcome to Season 2 of the Blind Tiger Record Club podcast. This has been a long time coming, and we're very excited to be back. I'm David Williams, and I'm here today with Austin Cox and Cody Driggers. Austin and Cody joined us last year on our Best of 2017 episode, and they also came back for our Season 1 episode of John Prine. So today, we're taking a look at the best vinyl of 2018. So welcome back, guys.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
us.
having us, man.
I'm really excited to kind of jump into a bunch of these records with you again this year. It was really fun last year, and when we were talking about doing this, I really wanted to have you guys come back for this one. On this show, we've pulled some of our favorite from the B.T.R.C. Best Vinyl of 2018 list that we posted at the beginning of the year on blindtigerrecordclub.com. On that list, we have 80 titles broken up by styles: singer-songwriter, rock, alternative rock, and jazz, soul, and blues. And all of these records were released on vinyl in 2018. So on the show today, each of the guests here have pulled titles from that list to discuss. They are not in any order. They're just great records that we would encourage everyone listening to check out. So let's drop the needle and talk about some of the best vinyl of 2018. So the first record I wanted to talk about was Anderson East. So this record came out January 12th, 2018, and was the Blind Tiger Record Club Alternative Record of the Month. When the album was released, it peaked at number 48 on Billboard 200 and number 3 on the Billboard Folk Americana chart and number 5 on Billboard's Rock chart. This one was produced by Dave Cobb, and it's nominated for a Grammy this year for the song All My Mind. It's been nominated for the Best Americana Roots Performance. So let's just get things started by going ahead and listening to that track, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
It's all on my mind. Feel something when I kiss you goodnight. It's all on my mind. Feel something when I open my eyes. It's all on my mind. Feel that I could
Man, that is a good song. That song went number 1 at AAA radio and number 35 on rock and 34 on top 40, which probably led to his Grammy nod for that song. But it's just a great track.
It is, man. He's got an incredible voice. I love Anderson East. I also read that song was co-written with Ed Sheeran, so that's kind of cool.
It is cool.
I like seeing a lot of these artists moving out of the Dave Cobb camp a little bit more into further into the mainstream, getting these Grammy nominations and these co-writes. It's kind of fun, especially since they're not like super poppy produced records.
All right.
Yeah, they're not polished for sure.
Mm-mm.
I love the groove in that song. It's just a fat groove the whole time. And the disco strings, man.
I know, right?
Totally has disco strings on it.
It's coming back, man. There's a lot of disco elements, I think, on a couple of these records that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, I mean, obviously, you know, I think both times that you guys have been on the podcast, we've talked a lot about Dave Cobb. I mean, one reason is you guys, you know, were on the podcast where we talked about John Prine, which was a Dave Cobb record.
Right.
But, you know, one of the things we've talked about a lot with him is just how good he is at working with vocalists and really just keeping their vocal out there. But I will say one thing about this Anderson East record, it is just to Cody's point, like the production on it is just so thick, and it's everything from the organs to the strings to his vocal. It just all it's one of the thickest, most produced things that I think I've heard from Cobb.
Yeah, I mean, he does such a good job of I don't know, you kind of feel like you're in the room when you're listening to a lot of these records. Since they do a lot of them live, and I mean, when you're listening to Anderson East, I mean, you're pretty drawn into his vocal as it is. I mean, that kind of goes along with most of the big records that Dave's done this year. I mean, how many records are nominated for Grammys this year that he's worked on?
John Prine, Brandy Carlisle, and I feel like there was one other. I mean, Anderson East, there's 3 artists that he worked with that are nominated, and I want to say there was one other, but I could be wrong about that.
It's just great. I mean, to me, that makes me really excited about the future of music and mainstream music, is that we have these type of records and these type of unique artists getting nominated like Anderson East. It's pretty exciting.
Well, especially, I mean, Anderson East, along with being nominated for a Grammy at this year Americana Awards and Honors, he was nominated for Emerging Artist of the Year. Now that went to Tyler Childers, but he was nominated. And to see these Americana artists start having, you know, like I said, this song went number 34 on top 40. And so you're starting to see, you know, some of this stuff really cross over into even the pop formats, which is, you know, really cool because, I mean, it's just becoming mainstream commercial, you know, acceptable music.
Mm-hmm.
What's really exciting, I think, with All in My Mind being nominated, and it's an Ed Sheeran co-write, maybe we'll see some more kind of mainstream co-writes with him in the future. Because, I mean, a Dave Cobb produced record I'm going to love, but I think Anderson East has that vibe and that vocal that you might even, if you dove into some more like tight produced compressed records, I think you could still pull it off and it'd be really fun. That funk and soul stuff.
Well, and I mean, I think even as we listen to this next track, I wanted to play This Too Shall Last. One of the things I'd even kind of mentioned to Cody earlier is I feel when I'm listening to Anderson East like the way I feel when I'm listening to artists like Joe Cocker. And it's not, he doesn't sound like Joe Cocker. It's just that it creates that kind of emotion. And I remember, I mean, Cocker was, you know, he played in all these different formats too. It was really hard to nail him down to just say he was either rock or, you know, singer songwriter or something like that. I mean, he just was just this huge, big artist, and I feel like sometimes we don't have a lot of those, you know, anymore, especially in pop. And so
Sure.
I think, I mean, I would love it if Anderson East became a big pop voice, you know.
Oh yeah, me too.
So,
Next thing you know, he's putting out that power ballad duet like "Love Lift Us Up Where We Belong," you know?
I miss the duets, don't you? I mean, Lionel Richie and Kenny Rogers, they all need to come back.
They did it, man. They did it. But nobody will ever have moves like Joe Cocker. Sorry, Anderson.
Well, that's, yeah.
You're a good singer, but you'll never move like Cocker.
Cocker's a legend, but it's not that we need another Joe Cocker. It's just, man, it sure is refreshing to have some stuff that, you know, kind of fits in that family and that world.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Let's go ahead and listen to This Too Shall Last.
Looking all around, you think nothing's really working. The pieces never fit quite naturally. We didn't come with directions, somehow we found perfection, and it all worked out just how it's meant to be. And through the passion, through the fights, through the wrong turns we made right, there's one thing will never change. And this too shall last. When the beauty is gone, time goes by too fast. And the feelings are wrong and troubles don't seem to pass. We got each other, it'll be alright. We got the love to make it through the night. This too shall last. That door is always open.
So that was This Too Shall Last, and that's his current single. It's currently at number 40 at AAA. It'd be interesting to see if that can kind of work its way up the chart a little bit. I think like the strength of this album for me is the range of energy it possesses, because it, you know, like we talked about it being thick or huge, whatever word you want to use, like the production on it has all these like really high energy songs that just keep driving. But then like that song that we just were listening to, you know, is borderline a ballad, and it still feels thick and heavy, you know, like just really, really good. And I, you know, again, you know, I think a lot of it's the Hammond driving that, you know, and things that are kind of setting this production kind of tone musically, but it's just really easy to kind of sit back in for the whole record, whether it's the energy songs or the ballads. To me, I think you've got tracks like King for a Day is another one that's kind of, it's a kind of in between a ballad and kind of an energy song. And they're just there's another song called If You Keep Leaving Me that does the same thing. I mean, they're ballad-esque tracks, but they just drive.
Yep.
And I just love that about this record.
Well, it just shows the range with Anderson East too, because I mean, on those up-tempo songs when he's like basically screaming, it's so great. But he can still hit that raspy, like powerful vocal on the slower grooves, and I don't know. I love his voice. I keep saying that. I'm being really repetitive here, but it's a
great.
super powerful record, well-rounded, and it's charting, which I'm really excited about.
As a matter of fact, why don't we real quick play a little bit of If You Keep Leaving Me?
If you keep leaving me, I'll keep loving you. If you keep hurting me, I'll keep wanting you. Sure as the sky's blue, through all you put me through, if you keep leaving me, I'll keep loving you. You think by now I would learn to stay away from fire when I'm getting burned. But somehow I can't resist needing your goodbye kiss. If you keep leaving me.
So I just wanted to play that because I really feel like it's the soft moments like that that really give a lot of depth and balance to this project.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's also a great example of what we're talking about with the Hammond, because that, you know, kind of is really setting the whole tone for that song, that and his vocal. And that's the key, man, is what Dave does with his vocal really carries this whole album, whether it's an anthemic song like Girlfriend or that one we just listened to. And I think like that smooth vocal that is sitting there on these tracks, it's the kind of thing that anybody, it doesn't matter what genre of music you listen to, like you're going to respond to. I mean, it feels familiar. We've talked about it with some of these other throwback bands, whether it's Nathaniel Rateliff or, and Anderson East sits right in that zone here with some of these songs. But that one right there, like I think I could probably hear a bunch of legendary artists that aren't even with us anymore singing that song.
Totally. That's what's super exciting about these artists like Anderson East. To me, I feel like there was a moment for a little bit in music where everyone was trying really hard to be retro. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Everyone was dressing the part and just trying to rip everything off sound period correct. But now there's artists like him and some of the other artists we're going to talk about on the podcast that they've modernized it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really great. It doesn't sound like they're trying to be Motown.
It's more of like a throwback revival because it really is a resurgence of that sound, but it's new, and that's why it's so refreshing. It's so weird because it's so familiar. It's easy to just accept and get into it because you are almost familiar with it.
Right.
But it's still new and being done like so well that you have to kind of let it stand on its own. And I just don't think that's an easy thing to do. I think anybody can do a throwback, sound, but it's really hard to do that and really keep it current, fresh, and make it new again. You know.
And again, we talk about him so much, but there's so much of that goes back down to Cobb and hit the way he records in that room.
I think the three of us really are. This is the Dave Cobb fan club podcast.
It's funny because I don't even. It's not like I follow Dave Cobb. Like, what new record is he putting out? I feel like I hear a new record and I'm like, who produced this? And I look and it's Cobb. I'm like, of course.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later in the podcast. There's another one that I even forgot till just now that we're talking about that is also a Dave Cobb record, and I did not know until I had been listening to it and taking notes to get ready to write about it because it was one of our records of the month. But
nice.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is another Dave Cobb.
He's the man.
Well, all right. Well, let's jump from January with Anderson East. Let's jump all the way to September with a record that I know is one of y'all's favorites of the year. Let's talk about Ruston Kelly's Dying Star. This was on, I think, everybody's list. All of us had this down as one of our favorite records of the year. So this is definitely kind of out of our collective list, one of the top ones for all of us. I mean, I think the first thing, obviously we should mention is he's obviously married to Casey Musgraves. So he's part of, they're having a pretty amazing year right now, I think.
No doubt.
Oh, yeah.
So
Good for them.
Yeah. But Ruston's, he's been around for a while. I mean, he's penned a lot of songs with big country artists, some of them, a couple of big hits. And it's just nice to see him kind of starting to find his own legs here.
Right.
This one was co-produced with Jared Kay, who he's done a Weezer record. He's worked with Kate Nash. And when this album came out, it peaked at number 9 on the Americana Folk Albums chart on Billboard. It also, on a couple of other end-of-year lists, it was number 13 on American Songwriter's end-of-year list. It was number 11 on Rolling Stone's Country and Americana end-of-year list.
Nice.
So, people are paying attention to it, and I think it should be paid attention to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a refreshing record.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and play a track off of that. Let's start with Mockingbird, his first single, and let's go ahead and listen to that, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Pretty wings, you're the prettiest thing. You're like Parker Posey in a magazine with star with a backwards hat. I'm gonna write a book and put your name on every page. Every page. Hey, pretty little mockingbird, keep singing them sad, sad songs. It's already rain on my window. I'm dying when the morning comes. Flew away in the night with the raven. Now I'm underneath the willows hanging. I'm too strung out to be upside down. Pretty little mockingbird, sing a song.
All right, well, that was Mockingbird, and that's currently at AAA Radio. I think it's working its way down right now, but it peaked at number 25 on AAA chart. It's a great introduction, I think, to the album.
It really is.
yeah.
Yeah, it pretty much kind of sums up, the feel of the record for the most part, even with that super chill acoustic picking intro, and then it busts into that huge part with the harmonica. It's like
Yeah, I knew you
likes
guys
to do
were digging the harmonica.
you kind of go from its lowest to its highest kind of in the first 30 seconds of that
Yeah.
song.
I'm a huge Dylan fan, and I know it's kind of cliche that like anytime a singer-songwriter goes up with a harmonica, you kind of compare him to Dylan. But I feel like the way he plays it on this record, it's not like a blues harp or anything. It's just kind of like all over the place, kind of hitting
Yeah.
some shrieky notes.
It's
here
kind of
and there.
not that good.
Yeah, exactly. Like Highway 61.
and it works so
revisited.
well.
Yeah.
Well, I think, we'll probably talk about this a lot as we're discussing his songs, but I mean, I think this album, to me, it represents like some of the best of what Nashville offers. To me, it feels like an album that would be made here. But
Absolutely.
lyrically, it's really strong.
Yeah. And kind of
And-
punk rock too.
Well, I mean, it's especially when you talk about a lot of the subject matter, being, kind of climbing out of addiction and
Yep.
and finding redemption and all of that, and that it's such a heavy topic matter. I mean, I think it definitely gives it a little bit of a dark edge. But one of the things that I think super refreshing about this record is that even though there's a lot of kind of dark subject matter, it always stays fairly light. I mean, even melodically as well as like with the lyrics, I always find that these little things of hope that he sprinkles all in, like he's never lost his way. And so, I mean, I think it really is a strong record for the year.
It's, man, we were saying when the mics were off and we were listening, how I can't really think of a bad song on this record, at least for me personally. I listen to that record top to bottom every time. I love it.
I agree.
And
I
even-
do the same.
Even before the record, when he did that little EP with, what was it, Black Magic or
The
Halloween.
Halloween?
Yeah.
I was basically ruining those singles for myself. I was listening to them all the time, and I really like this guy. I mean, he incorporates some of my favorite aspects of the singer-songwriter sort of genre. There's that country Americana influence in there. Back to the Dylan harmonica stuff. The lyricism is awesome. It's super personable. Kind of makes you cringe in some spots on some of the songs.
Yeah.
He kind of makes you a little uncomfortable. It's good.
What
I
it
love
sounds like to me is a guy who wrote a lot of songs with a lot of people and finally said, okay, I'm going to write about what I want to write about now.
Yeah.
And he had done so much, like, let's make everything in a box and kind of ambiguous, like you do when you write a song that you want to chart well, like you
Right.
can't be too specific. And he said, okay, I've done enough of that. Now I want to write about something specific.
Well, he writes what he knows.
Yeah.
I mean, he lived it.
And
so
that's-
like that gives it a level of authenticity that I think just, makes you draw in even more to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he's been writing in Nashville for a while. I think he has like a Tim McGraw cut. I know he's got a few cuts scattered around there.
Yeah.
So
He does.
bringing that,
He wrote Nashville Without You that Tim McGraw did, and then he wrote another big one was Front Row Seat by the Josh Abbott Band.
nice.
So he has been, I think, writing around. I think that's a good point. Is like I think the EP that you mentioned, the Halloween EP. I think that one was important for him last year because that kind of started getting people to pay attention.
Oh yeah.
So it was really great to kind of tee this record up because then everybody's kind of like, oh well, let's see what he's going to do, and then he comes out with this one, and everyone's kind of like, wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a home run.
It also says a lot too. You know, when you end up getting engaged and married to a almost pop superstar like he
Right.
did. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's plenty of fans that have rolled over to be a fan of his because they're huge fans of Casey. But I think that shouldn't matter at all on this record.
Right.
Like, it's just so good. It has nothing to do with like who he's connected with. But you know, there's an aspect of that you can hear the Nashville songwriting influence in it. But then every time I see him, he's wearing like Misfit shirts and like metal tees and stuff like that, you know, and you kind of hear that in his lyrics. It's kind of, you know, the dark overtones, undertones, whatever.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot of darkness in this record lyrically. There are, like, a lot of it makes me uncomfortable.
Well, let's listen to another track. Let's listen to Blackout. This one has Kate York and Joy Williams, you know, from the Civil War singing background vocals. So let's go ahead and listen to that one, and we'll come back and talk more about it.
Hello again, how have you been? You never seem to have much to say. I've been awake for a week, I'm trying not to sleep, and you drain every little bit of me away. And you know I ain't doing too well, but I found a few things that help. I black out in a bar, I get high in my car, I drive around in circles till I'm seeing stars. I get so fucked up to forget who you are. I dumb down my head so I can't feel my heart pound. A blackout.
So strong song.
Sad song.
I read a quote in Rolling Stone that said, "I wouldn't have been able to make this record unless I got clean, unless I found what sobriety meant to me, not what it meant for someone else," which, you know, is pretty much what that song is all about. So
Yeah, a lot of I mean, there are songs about him coming out of it, but a lot of these songs are just, it's like he just recalled being in the thick of it and just wrote about that. There's not necessarily like, here's where I was, but, you know, it's just like, oh, this was where I was at the time, and I'm gonna write a song about it.
Yeah, and he does a really good job with like the storytelling aspect of being a songwriter. In a lot of these songs, I always kind of get something different out of it every time I listen to it. But that aspect of the Nashville songwriting, as far as mainstream country goes, you know, you got to kind of stick to the format, and you got to be a really good storyteller. And I feel like he took that skill that he has and mixed that in with some of his own personal experiences, sort of those journal entries, you know. And it's easy to follow, but it still hits you where it counts.
I'm just excited that he got out of it with enough of his brain left to be able to write about addiction the way he can write about it, you know?
Yeah, seriously.
Well, and I think I've read a lot that his producer, you know, is also really good friends with him, and I guess they spent a lot of time in LA together, and he was kind of credited with really helping him through a couple of relapses. And so, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of the people involved on this project with him like kind of understand where he's coming from, and were able to support this direction of where this thing needed to go, you know, probably in a better way than just, you know, an average producer would.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's turned out the way that it has, because I mean he's in my top 10 artists right now for sure.
I appreciate that he's not running away from like the kind of rawness of the whole experience for him, you know.
Right.
I think a lot of people that had been there and were now sober would feel almost obligated to write about the more of like the positive other side of it, you know what I mean? And they would kind of feel like, oh, I have to do this, but he just writes about what it was like, you know, like the real raw, uncomfortable.
Yeah, like talking about it instead of talking about it like it was past, like talking about it in present.
Yeah, he writes the songs as if, you know, he's right
going
there.
through it right now. Yeah,
Without even mentioning the fact that he found his way out. You know, he
Right.
just writes about what it was at the time, and like we get a glimpse into that, and it's dark sometimes, but man, it's really good songs.
Well, and that's the thing is like I really, you know, I want to play the next song, which is Faceplant, but this is another one that's kind of in the same subject, matter realm that we're talking about. But I feel like it's not just that he's being honest, because I mean, a lot of people can be honest with their art, but he does it so well. Like he really is good at crafting these songs. They're very poetic. Like the way he says things. There's so many one-liners off of this record that I would pull out, in various places that I'm just like, man, that's a great line. Like it's a great line for a song.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and listen to Faceplant, and then we'll talk about that.
I took too many pills again. I took too many pills again. Blacked out for a week, didn't eat, didn't sleep, came to hit it all again. She's probably gonna be pissed. She's probably gonna be pissed. Throw my shit in the yard to keep my car if I show up to her house like this. Oh, it was a dark December. Not even angels came around. And I was too stoned to remember. Come too far to turn back now. Come too far to turn back now.
So this is one of the songs that the producer encouraged him to work through when he was going through some of these relapses that we talked about. And obviously this song is basically about crawling out of a low point. But it reminds me of John Prine.
That's what I was about to say.
And I was thinking of you, Austin, totally with this song, because I know how much you like John Prine, but the way, and I think he, I've read in different places like he's a big John Prine fan too.
Yeah.
But this it's the way he phrases everything on this song.
Yeah, and it's fun. you
Yeah,
know, like,
and that's what I meant about like it's dark but light, like,
Yeah.
and that's like a total. We talked about this on the John Prine record. Like John always does that.
Yep.
Make you laugh and cry in the same song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And my favorite is got my favorite line on the whole album for me is when he says, "I feel like I'm gonna fall down. I feel like I'm gonna fall down, but I was born and raised in an earthquake state, so I'm better on shaky ground." And it's just, I'm just like, man, that is awesome.
That's great.
I think in many ways the strength of this album, like we've talked about, really is his poetic honesty in the whole thing. And I think that this project is really good even just for Nashville, because I really think it's going to naturally get associated with Nashville for a lot of reasons, but it really is. It's not always like what people associate just with Nashville if you're not from here, because it's not one of the bigger format kind of driven styles. But I think this is really one of the best records to come out of here in a while.
I agree.
It's probably my favorite record to come out last year. I think I'd be willing to say that.
It's one of my favorites for sure. It was on my personal list of top 10.
Yep.
For all you folks at home, if you want to do some homework, my favorite track on the record is the title track, Dying Star, for two reasons. Number one, the bass, the hook, the musical hook is in the bass, which is awesome and super rare. And as a bass player, I love that. Number two, I think that song's about his rock bottom, if you listen to the lyrics. And so that, if you know his story a little bit, that's a cool one to listen to and kind of hear about that moment for him. So Ruston Kelly, everybody.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And there is a lot of diversity on this record. I think a couple songs like Cover My Tracks and Son of a Highway Daughter, like I could hear those almost being done by an alternative band.
Yeah.
Just the way they're written. And so yeah, it's a really strong record. I think it commands kind of a deeper listen. You just spend some time with it and you really get a lot more out of it.
You're exactly right, because that's what I've done. I've spent a lot of time with that record and I've gotten a lot out of it.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and switch gears to a completely different style of music and talk about the band Thrice and their release, Palms.
Let's talk about it.
So this is a band's 10th studio album,
Yeah.
This was released September 14th of 2018, so a week after Ruston Kelly's. Not that they're connected at all, just right around the same time frame.
Right.
This peaked at number 27 on Billboard 200 and was number 1 on Billboard's alternative hard rock. And it was number 1 on Billboard's alternative, number 1 on the hard rock chart, as well as the independent albums chart. It was number 2 on rock and number 1 on vinyl album. So it came out, and did really well on its first week. It caught attention of a few people for the end of year list. Alternative Press had it as one of the best records of the year. And I think we should go ahead and let's listen to The Gray, which is the first single off the record.
There was a time when I tried to hold the ocean in my fist. I mistook the language for the light. There was a tightness that gripped my soul, bubbled at my wrist, choked me within inches of my life. Now I'm letting go.
That was The Gray, which went to number 14 at Mainstream Rock. It's a good song. I think represents, a lot of what this record feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really, really strong chorus in that song. The first time I heard that chorus, I was like, yep, this is it. Like really, really, really strong. It just opens up, and, the intro's cool, a lot of kind of chaotic drum rhythms in that guitar line, kind of introduces the element of chaos, and then the verses are kind of whatever, and then you hit that chorus and it just explodes. It just opens up really, really strong.
Do you think that Thrice branched out in any way on this record, as opposed to some of the ways we've seen them evolve?
I don't.
Other than like the synth sounds,
I think they
maybe?
toned it down.
Yeah.
I don't think they branched out. I think they branched in.
Yeah.
On this album.
I say that because I feel like they incorporated my favorite aspects of Thrice's sound that they've done over the years. That's my personal opinion. It was a good Thrice record.
I would push back on that a little bit. I would not say that I'm anywhere near the fan that Cody is, but for me, this had some mood elements that were a lot different than a lot of their normal records.
It's a very
I
moody
liked
album.
it actually.
Yeah.
For me, it made me like it better.
Yeah.
But I'm also not as deep a fan, as Cody is in the past. So it probably is a much bigger departure for you, but than it would be for me because I'm not, as versed on some of their earlier records.
What I've always loved about Thrice is that they've always kind of pulled me out of the box. They're super, super creative in their writing, in their the time signatures and meters that they use and write within. They do a lot of mode changes within the keys that they're writing songs in. A lot of really, really creative and really smart things musically. They're a very smart band, and that's not even getting into the melody and lyric.
Right.
Like Dustin's a genius in his own right when it comes to that. But
Oh, yeah.
just as a musical entity, they're very, very smart, and that's always challenged me as a listener and a writer. Just figuring out what's going on. It's always been a lot of fun. So there's still a lot of that on this record, but less than in the past. Really, it's not my favorite Thrice record, but I love it. That's how much I love this band. It's not my favorite Thrice record, but
it says a lot.
one of my favorites of the year still.
It says a lot. A band that's been around as long as they have in the scene that they've been popular in to still be able to put out a legit good record.
Yeah.
They've been. What was that? I've been listening to Thrice since Artist in the Ambulance.
Yeah, it was 2002.
Yeah, and then you went through the what was the 4 EPs, the Elements.
Yeah, the Alchemy Index.
Yep.
To me, it was the album that came out before the Alchemy Index. After Artist, the album Visu. It was
That was a good
different than anything I had ever heard up until that point.
I loved Beggars.
Kind of changed music for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when I knew like this band was like a lifer band for me. Like anything they put out, I will probably really like.
Well, that's the thing. I think they pulled out based off, what you were saying, David. I think they pulled some of those mellow elements that they did from some of the earlier stuff and incorporated it into this newer one. And it just all of it's kind of come full circle.
Yeah,
which is.
Well, let's listen to Only Us. This is another song off the album that I think kind of continues on like kind of what we're talking about with some of these like really cool like mood elements.
I see through your eyes. You breathe with my lungs. I strain with your ear to make out the words your mother sung. I bless with your hands. Pray on my knees. It's my blood in your veins, in your heart. It's beating in me. Finally, when will it be enough? To find there's no them, there is only us. There's only us.
That's kind of that whole mood thing I was talking about. That song makes me feel like I'm watching a movie.
Oh yeah, very
And
cinematic.
It is. It's a visual song the whole time. And to me, I feel like the strength of this album, that what I liked about it was the emotion that the whole album elicits. And it reminded me of the kind of song crafting that Manchester Orchestra does.
Yeah.
And especially if you guys remember, I bring that up because last year, that was on our best of list. We all talked about it. We all loved a Black Mile to the Surface. And I feel like there's a lot of things that they did on that record, because that record was a little bit different for them. And I think, that we talked about how critically they got a little bit of pushback even from some of their base because it was a different album for them. And that's what I felt like listening to this record. I was like, clearly even not being like a long time Thrice fan, like I still felt like, okay, they're still heavy, but this is, and I can see that this is different, probably different for their base. But for me, I like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, the energy's still there. It still drives, even when it's on the more, mellower songs. But
Yeah. And there's a few songs that are straightened out a little bit more, like Hold Up a Light, like could be a Nirvana song. Like it's just totally straightforward. It's like on 10 the whole time. There's nothing really weird about it musically or rhythmically, It's just like a straight up rock song. And they haven't done a ton of that, Everything has got to have that weirdness to it. And it's like they said, let's just not do that for a song and just write a rock jam.
Well, I feel like it all still fits though. Like all the album really is cohesive, and I just think it's hard for a hard rock band to really kind of like create this boundary that they're going to stay within. Because whatever word you want to use, whether it's mood or mellow or cinematic, like it's just a different it's a kind of album for them, and I don't know that it's necessarily like their normal go-to, place. So I just enjoy the record. I think it was a really strong rock release for the year.
it was great. I'm glad Thrice still lives on.
They do.
All right, well let's talk about another kind of rock guy. This is Brian Fallon and his 2018 release Sleepwalkers. So this came out back in February. This was February 9th was the release. And obviously, for those of you listening, if you're not familiar with Brian Fallon, he's the front man for Gaslight Anthem. And he also has another side project called The Horrible Crows, but he's mostly known, for Gaslight Anthem. This is his second solo album, and it peaked at number 42 on Billboard 200, number 3 on rock and alternative charts, number 7 on Americana folk, and number 4 on vinyl albums. And it was also number 15 on UK album charts. So I think there was a lot of anticipation always for him because he's just kind of like this underground favorite, among, critics and indie rock fans. This was also our February record of the month. And I think it's a fairly strong record for him. This one was produced by Ted Hutt. Ted is one of the founding members of Flogging Molly, but he's also produced several Gaslight Anthem albums, including the seminal 59 Sound album. So I think you'll hear that, as we listen to some of this music with Brian, you're going to hear that probably familiarity to his sound. So let's go ahead and listen to the first song. This one's Forget Me Not. All right, that was Forget Me Not, and I think right out the gate, you probably hear what I was referencing with kind of this Gaslight sound on that one.
Oh, yeah. You know a Brian Fallon tune when you hear it, for sure.
That song makes me feel so good and so happy.
It's probably a little lighter than some Gaslight songs, but and maybe that's one of the differences just with Brian's solo stuff. Like, I don't know that I necessarily would hear Gaslight singing that one, but obviously it's hard to separate Brian from Gaslight, but I think he does on this record. But that song in particular, I think if you're a Gaslight Anthem fan, there's no reason not to just completely embrace that tune.
Oh, yeah.
And he pulls you right in with that little holler thing he does in the verses. It's like that he created the hook of the song outside of any kind of melody,
Yep.
And it's in the verses, too. That's what draws you in.
I love it when he does that. I mean, obviously, you can't do that on every song, but it's awesome when he does it.
Yeah, it's different. It's different for him, too. He doesn't do a whole lot of that hollery, screechy stuff, but, man, it just pulls you right in, and then the whole rest of the song, you're just in the best mood. It's happy.
Let's go ahead and listen to another song by them. This one is If Your Prayers Don't Get to Heaven.
I'm packing up, I gotta move. I'm gonna blow a 50-foot hole through the dark clouds in my room. I'm making a change. I'm gonna start today. I'm gonna roll these dice with a song tonight. I'm gonna whip these blues away, and I'm gonna run so far they'll never find me again. But I ain't leaving unless I'm leaving here with you. I've been patient while I waited, but I feel it's time to move. You've been crying, yeah, I seen you. Honey, I've been crying too. But if your prayers don't get to heaven, I'm gonna keep them safe for you. If your prayers don't get to heaven, I'm gonna keep them safe till they do.
That was If Your Prayers Don't Get to Heaven, and it's just another kind of really fun, light track.
Yep, he's got a lot of those. I think that's where he shines. He's really good at the ballads too, but they're kind of hit or miss for me sometimes. But man, those like feel good rock jams, he knows how to write those, and they're great with his vocal. His vocal is made for those kind of tracks. His vocal gets a little bit drony and to me on some of the ballady stuff, but for that style of song, man, his vocals just made for it. It fits in the pocket so well.
No, I think that's a great point. As a matter of fact, I want to go ahead and play another song called Proof of Life, which is probably the closest you get to a true ballad on this record. But let's go ahead and do that. We can kind of compare that and talk about that.
There's so many voices jamming up the stations, and it's hard to hear the angels, so I don't feel too forgiving. And I get up in the morning like a ghost chained to a haunting, and I come home in the evening 'cause you're all I ever wanted, and I feel like you keep me hanging on. So I'm gonna sing right now while my heart still pounds, 'cause tonight is almost over, tomorrow's such a long time, and if all my words are gone to waste away in the unknown, as long as you know how I loved you, that would be the proof of life when I am gone.
So that song, Proof of Life, and the closing track, See You on the Other Side, are really like the ballad moments on this record. And I feel like that's where they get distinctively Brian Fallon. I think to your point, like if your prayers don't get to heaven, like his vocal sounds amazing on those kind of tracks.
Mm-hmm.
These to me are so, like I would never hear like Gaslight doing this. You know, to me this is like so just Brian.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
and it's really a well-crafted song.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
He's
So,
a great writer. He
yeah.
always has been.
I think that's probably the strength of this record is I think it allows Brian to do some things that he's not going to do in a Gaslight album. It allows his vocal is a unique vocal, and it allows it to kind of maybe be a little more present than it's going to be mixed in a rock track.
Right.
And you know, Gaslight has all these anthemic choruses, which I love, but these kind of like tenor moments that he allows on this record, to me are so different for him that I really enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and transition to our next album, which is a big one for us to talk about just because the artist is huge. And I mean huge, not just by he's one of the biggest artists in the world, but I think for probably all of us sitting in this table, he's probably one of our favorite artists of all time. Let's talk about Tom Petty and An American Treasure.
Gladly.
I'm hesitant to discuss this album in general because, like, I feel like you can't do it justice if we're just going to talk about a couple tracks off of this compilation.
Four
Yeah.
discs.
Yeah, you know, and that is one thing I will mention. I think like normally we wouldn't include like a box set or like a greatest hits in a kind of like into your best of list.
Right.
But for this one, because it's such a beautiful compilation, the way it was put together, and I feel like that anyone that is getting a compilation kind of put together for them posthumously, like this is what they would be something that like this. It's a bunch of rarities and uncut. Songs that we haven't heard, you know, and non-released outtakes, and
Live
I think,
takes.
yeah, and I think especially for the outtakes that stuff that we haven't heard before. I mean, I think that warranted this still kind of being included, even though it's immense. I mean, like the standard version has 26 songs. The big box set has 63 on six LPs, and so 63 tracks.
6 discs. I thought it was 4.
Yeah, and so you know, this was released in November of last year. It came out at number 9 on Billboard 200, number 1 on Billboard Rock, and number 38 on UK Albums. Even though it's a massive compilation, so you know, the set was produced with people that are very, very close to Tom. It was a couple of guys from the Heartbreakers, as well as Dana, his wife, and his daughter, Adria, and 2 Heartbreakers, Mike Campbell and Bentmont Tench. It definitely is a career perspective, but they really focused in on rarities and kind of B-sides and things that probably are overlooked on, you know, definitely be overlooked on just a greatest hits, which I think is another thing that makes this compilation very special. So I think just to get things started here, let's go ahead and play his first single off this record, Keep a Little Soul, which was originally an outtake from the album Long After Dark.
I know you tried hard to get it right. There's a sadness in your eyes. Oh, level one, they rule you like a king. Don't be afraid to depend on me. Nothing matters. No, I said you keep a little soul, and nothing really matters anymore. Oh, honey, keep a little soul, and nothing's gonna matter anymore.
that song went all the way to number 3 on AAA. And I believe on media-based charts, it may have even gone number 1 on the same format. But any way you cut it, I mean, you're talking about a track that was cut 35 years ago and came back. And I don't really feel that like anyone was like throwing him a bone. I mean, we were all I think collectively mourning, him still, even when this single came out. But I don't think that's why the song did well. I think the song flew up the charts because
it's great.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's a
Tom
great
Petty.
song.
Yeah, it's a great song because he's the best. He's the best there ever was.
I agree.
That's why the song is doing well.
Yeah.
Because it was written by the best songwriter and artist ever.
I think we're Tom Petty fans over here.
Yeah, I've when he passed away, it's the first time I think that for me that someone of a celebrity's status or an artist or whatever, it ever really personally, like, I kind of felt it.
Yep, same.
First time. And
That's the same thing for me.
yeah, for days, like, I kept listening to the XM, Tom Petty's XM channel, because everybody was calling in across the country and just kind of sharing their own Tom Petty stories, and I just couldn't stop listening for days and days. I just wanted to hear what fans as well as music journalists were calling it. Everybody was, giving their favorite Tom Petty story. And he's such a huge artist, but I think it's crazy that a throwaway track from 35 years ago is still this good.
It's pretty crazy.
I mean, what does that say about, to even have a catalog so deep that you can have a 24/7, satellite channel that nobody gets tired of. You've got to have an immense body of work, first of all, but then it's got to be good.
I don't know what it was about Tom Petty, but everything he touched turned to gold.
He just had that thing, man. He's had that thing.
Don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Yeah.
Well, we had mentioned kind of, this compilation being full of rarities and stuff, and I think it really is one of the things that makes it special is that it's pulling tracks that maybe you wouldn't pay much attention to. I want to play another one. This one's called "Don't Treat Me Like a Stranger." And this was originally a B-side on the single in 1989 from "I Won't Back Down." So let's play that, and then we'll talk about it.
How can you walk away? How can you look away? How can you run away and make me feel bad? Hear what I have to say, hear what I have to say. How can you look away and make me so sad? Please don't treat me like a stranger. No, don't treat me like a stranger. I leave you so well, you never can tell. Don't treat me like a stranger.
So that's another one. I think they could release that one today, and either get the Traveling Wilburys back together or just put it out as, like you said, like just Tom Petty.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about as it played. Is Dave said, "Man, that could have been a Traveling Wilburys track," and I said, "Or replace that 12-string with electric guitars, and it would fit right in on Damn the Torpedoes." Like, it's so versatile, and it's whichever way you want to go with it, it works because the song is good. Whatever else you want to do with it after the fact is whatever, but at the core of it, it's a great song, and that's what he did. He wrote great songs.
Yeah. So another song I'll just mention, is there's a song called "Gainesville," which was an outtake from the album Echo, came out in 1998. So it's another one, didn't make the cut, but really solid song.
It's so good.
Yeah. Do you want to hear that one?
I would love to hear
All right,
that.
well, let's go ahead and play that.
It's especially when you know where he comes from, kind of his history,
Yeah.
and growing up there. Like, it's crazy. Even that far removed from his
Yeah.
childhood, he can still recall that to write a song about it.
Well, let's go ahead and listen to it.
Homegrown in the headphone, Sandy loading up the van, singing through the speaker. You're alright anywhere you land.
So there's another outtake, another great track, and I'm so glad that we're getting to hear these.
Me too, man.
This compilation's like it's a must-have for Tom Petty fans.
Well, it really is. I mean, if you're a Tom Petty fan, you really need to have it. But even if you're not, it's a great. I mean, if you don't get the deluxe edition, at least get the standard. And listen to some of these tracks that you're not going to be familiar with. They're all strong, and it's really hard to put together a compilation for an artist like this that's had so much come out. I mean, even before he passed away, he had the anthology albums, which was, I don't even remember how many discs that set was of his live stuff. We've already talked about this XM channel. I mean, like he's been covered both in print, in writing, as well as in an audio format. And so to put a compilation together that still is fresh and new, like I don't even know how you do that. And somehow they did here.
And the physical release too, we were looking at it in the office, all the liner notes and all the like studio notes and stuff, all the photos. They went all out on this one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful set. It really is. I want to play one more track. This one is You and Me. I want to play the American Treasure version, and then we'll merge that together with the Last DJ version.
Cool.
And we'll talk about that.
Take a look at what I got. I can't promise you a lot, but you and me and the road ahead. And I can't save you from yourself. You gotta want it. All that's left is you and me in the road ahead. Wherever that wind might blow, wherever that river rolls, you know I will go with you. Looking over the mountain's crown, the water roars and tumbles down like you and me, and the road ahead.
I wanted to play those two versions just to kind of show kind of how they're both amazing. And it really is awesome to have like this other version that you wouldn't have heard. The Last DJ is an album that wasn't as big as a lot of his records, and I think like there's even a lot to even for the casual Tom Petty fan, there's a lot to even discover on that album. But to hear this version of You and Me is really cool to kind of juxtapose those two.
That's what a lot of people forget. They get into the greatest hits album of Tom Petty, and they forget that he kept making really great records for a long time after that. Long time. The Echo, The Last DJ is so good, and then Mojo is so fun. It's such a fun album, and it's like riffy and kind of heavy sometimes, and so rock and roll. It's so cool. And this was like, Homeboy was old when they made that record, and he still had it. And it probably didn't do that well because everyone was still streaming greatest hits on Spotify and missed the Mojo train.
Right.
Go listen to Mojo, listeners. It's so cool.
Well, and really, I think that is the true strength of this album. Is I think it's very rare for a posthumous release to feel as much like the artist that it's actually representing, as this one does. I mean, I feel like Tom would have probably put this compilation together himself.
Yeah.
Specifically because it really is highlighting a lot of these later records that they're so good, and they're just not as they're not held up as much as, you know, his earlier, like, maybe if you put a line in the sand at the Greatest Hits album, like everything pre that album, you know, as well as his solo stuff like Full Moon Fever and Great Wide Open, like all of that stuff kind of gets lumped in the category, and people forget about, you know, for the casual Tom Petty listener, they don't really dig in on some of these later albums, and they're really good. This compilation is great. I mean, it does have some things from even Mudcrutch on it. It's got some Tom Petty solo stuff, but most of it is from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and it's just a really, really good album.
You listeners can't see, I'm showing everybody my Full Moon Fever tattoo. How much I love the Petty.
That's going to wrap it up for us for part one of the best vinyl of 2018. Come back tomorrow and grab episode 1, part 2, as we finish this discussion with Austin and Cody on these amazing albums. Austin, Cody, thank you so much for digging on these albums with me.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
For a dying man, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good. For a righteous
We also want to thank our sponsor, 85 Supply. The theme song for this season is For a Dying Man by Finnegan Bell. We appreciate their participation in the show, and you can check out more about them at finneganbell.com. Lastly, I just want to remind everybody that you do not have to be a member to shop at the record store, and all the music we discuss on this show is available in the store, as well as hundreds of other titles, many of them limited edition, colored, and rare vinyl. For listeners of this podcast, we are offering a special coupon only available here. Simply type in B.T.R.C. Box 5 in the coupon code at checkout to receive your first monthly vinyl for only $5. That's B.T.R.C. BOX 5 and start your monthly subscription in the style of your choice. So go to blindtigerrecordclub.com and find out how to get your monthly vinyl today. Your vinyl, your choice.
For a dying man, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good.